Hi, and welcome to the second part of this tutorial series for PBR texturing using Quixel Mixer. In the first part, I showed you how to prepare the mesh and bake all the necessary texture maps, and I can quickly show you. So this is the mesh, and these are all the textures that we prepared: the normal, curvature, color ID, cavity, and AO. And now I will show you how to set up a basic project in Quixel Mixer and start texturing. These texture and mesh files are also available for download using a link in the description below if you don't want to prepare them yourself. So let's create a new project first called tire, and create a new mix in this project also called tire, and select a working resolution. So this will be the resolutions that our textures will be processed in, and we can change it anytime, so it doesn't matter. I will leave it at 2K for now. Click OK, and we have a basic project in Mixer. So first we need to import our mesh. So go to setup and model settings, use custom mesh, and navigate to your mesh. Here it is, and let's open it, and here is how it looks in Mixer. So before we start, I want to mention that the workflow that I show is one that I have developed by myself, kind of by self-experimenting, because I couldn't find many good tutorials and resources to see how custom meshes can be textured in Mixer. So Mixer is basically a tool to develop tileable textures for surfaces, but for custom meshes this is something that they have just added in the 2020 release, and the workflow is not really well known yet. So at least I couldn't find any good tutorial, so I just learned it by experimenting and just playing around with the tool. Since it's a very new tool, so some of the very necessary features are still lacking from Mixer, like support for multiple texture sets or multiple objects. So you cannot texture an object with multiple sub-objects or multiple UV sets at the same time. UDIMs are not supported, and Mixer also does not currently have a baking system. But the developers have said that many of these features are currently being worked on, and they will be available in the future releases. So these were the negative points about Mixer, and let's start with the positives. So the UI is really simple. As you can see, it's very intuitive, and you really don't need a lot of time to get used to it and start your work. So this is the 3D viewport of Mixer, and you can navigate it by using Alt and your mouse buttons. So with the middle button you can pan, with the left button you can rotate, and with the right mouse button you can zoom in and zoom out. So basically the standard 3D control, which is almost available in all other 3D applications minus Blender. Okay, so here you can select what map you want to see on your object, and I will actively switch between them when we start to texture. Here you can change your mesh that you want to texture on, turn on or preview displacement if you want to preview tiling, and if you want to view a grid. Here you can select your views, so top view, front view, which are all orthographic views, and then the perspective view. And you can also change your HDRI, which is used to light your scene. So you can use them and to see different aspects of your texture and how will it look in different kinds of lighting situations. And you can rotate this HDRI using Shift and right click of the mouse. So it's also very handy and you can quickly change it. Mixer already has a material library that can be used to quickly apply material to your mesh objects, and this makes the whole process really fast, and we might use them for our mesh as well. If you have a Megascans account, you can also use this online tab here and search for search in the Megascan assets. And remember, for projects with Unreal Engine, you can already use the Megascan texture library free of cost. Coming to the right side of the window, here is the layers panel, and this is where we will do all the texturing, and I will come back to it later. The setup, where we set up our mesh, and the working resolution as well, and we can change it at any time and it will switch to a higher resolution. Then next we have the performance tab. So if you notice that the mixer viewport is not running as smooth as you want, you can change it here. So you can change your FPS or the resolution, the quality, and all of these settings can be tweaked to get the best performance from the texturing experience. So for example, here you can set to downsample your textures so that it actually uses a lower resolution of the textures provided, so that it gives you a better performance. You can disable shadows or lower tessellation, disable anti-aliasing, and all of this will improve the performance. In the export tab, you will export all of your textures that you have prepared, and then also you can select your resolution here and the name and also the settings for each one of the texture. You can also select which texture you want to export, and we will come to it in the end when we are ready with our textures. So let's start and go to the layers tab. So it already has a layer added to it, which is the default layer called base layer, and you cannot change it, but you can load the mesh maps that you already created for it. So I will do it now. So let's add the normal first. And you can see that it's already visible. So let's load the ambient occlusion. And you see it's a bit noisy, so you can increase the samples count when baking to it. I will just continue now with it, and let's decrease the strength a bit. Also the curvature can be added, and this is not visible here, but it will be used in a later stage when we want to add more edge based noise or wear and tear to the object, and also the material ID to separate the objects for texturing. And it already shows us by color how many separate objects do we have. So I want to start by adding rubber material for the tire. So let's start by adding a solid layer, and let's name it rubber, and I will then change the albedo of the rubber to black, and then maybe I can increase this already seems okay, so I will not change the roughness, and the displacement, normals, and occlusion I will turn off, and that's it for this part. And now I just want this rubber material to be visible on the rubber part of the tire. So remember that I already have a color ID or material for this material ID channel added, so I can use it here. So I will, for the rubber, I will select this ID, and it will add a material ID mask, and I can select the color, which was, I believe it was red. Yes, so now it's separating the material by this color. Now I want to add a small bump to the rubber, and then let's add another solid layer. Let's name it rubber bump. And then I will also need to add the same ID, color ID to this material. But what I can do is that I can add these two to a group layer, and then mask the group by this color ID. And then whatever layers I have in this group will be masked by this color ID. So I will delete the ID mask from here. So let's name the group rubber, and for the bump I don't want it to affect the albedo or the metalness and also the roughness. So I will disable those channels and also occlusion. So I will add a mask stack to this bump layer, and then the mask that I define in this mask stack can then be used as a bump for this surface. And here is the panel where all the magic happens. From this button you can add a new mask component, and these are the filters that you can then apply to those masks. And let's quickly add a noise mask, and let's use Perlin and maybe change it a little bit. And to quickly see the mask on the mesh, I can use the hotkey 9, or I can go here and change the view channel, and you can quickly cycle through them by using the number keys on the keyboard by 1, 2, 3, and 9 is for the mask channel. So let's change this mask a little bit. I want a little more grain here, so maybe add the frequency, add some octaves to it, and maybe also increase the linearity and persistence. Okay, so but maybe the amplitude should be a little less so that there is not too much variation. And now I want to tile it more so that the scale is not so big. So let's add a projection filter, and then just crank the repetitions up. And it's still too big, so I will add another projection and then increase it as well. And this kind of seems okay. So you can press 1 to go back to the material view, and it doesn't show. That is because we need to change the blend settings in the material, and you can switch between the mask editing panel and the material by clicking on the icons in the layer. So what I can change here is that take this wrap to underlying wave down so that it does the new mask does not wrap to the layer below it, and then change the threshold, and now you can see that the mask is a bit visible. So in this way, this threshold works as the intensity for this bump. And when you are working with surfaces, then this is the threshold of how much a surface will be visible on the surface below it or above it, depending on your blend mode. But for texturing a mesh, I have found this setting to work the best for me. And you can see that in the normal view, if you press 5 on the keyboard, you can see that how it affects the normal, and from here you can also see that it's also affecting the displacement as well. So press 1 to go back to material view, and let's continue. So now this looks like a really new tire, but what we want is an old worn out tire. So I want to add some damage to this tire and make it look old. And for this I will first add a new solid layer and then name it wear, and then add a mask stack to it, and then maybe view this mask stack so it appears completely white. And then I want to add a map, and I will use a custom image, and I will use an image that I downloaded from CC0 Textures, which is a free texture website, and it has a lot of great resources for surface wear maps that you can use. The scratches map that I use here, you will also find it in the files that you downloaded from the link in the description. So you can add an image by clicking this add image, and then you can select a texture from here. I will use this one, scratches 004 2K var 1. So first I want to change the output color range for this map so that it has a bit more contrast. So you can use these two sliders here to map the color output, and maybe to increase the contrast for the whites. I will arrange this one, maybe take a bit higher, decrease it a little bit, and it looks okayish. And now I want to add a projection filter and change the projection type to box projection to get rid of these tiling artifacts here. And this looks okay. Let's decrease the scale a little bit. And what I want is that this outside of the tire has these straight lines, because all tires which have been in use for a long time, they develop these linear scratches on the outer surface, and this is the effect that I want from the wear map. And so I will then rotate the projection, and this looks kind of okayish. So what I want is that these linear kind of scratches should only be visible on the upper side of these features here, not on the inside the ridges, because that's not how a tire is worn out. So these should only be here. So for this I will add another map, and let's switch to the map channel by pressing 9 and add another map here. And for this map I will again use a custom image and then use the cavity map that I baked earlier in Blender. And here you can notice right off the bat that it already filters out the upper portion of the tire features here, but I will still adjust it a little bit so that it really cancel out any effect on these insides or inner cavities of the surface. And then I will multiply it, and this will then multiply this map with the masks in the stack, the masks that are lower in the stack, and this will give us our effect. So let's change the blending to multiply, and this looks like kind of the result that I was looking for already. And now I want these lines kind of to look like they are fading away on the sides of the tire to make it look more realistic, and this can be achieved by using the position gradient mask. So let's add one and then try to separate one of the sides of the tire Let's see, let's rotate it and then tilt it. So with this it's evident that this side can be now multiplied out of the map, and maybe make it a complete 90. Okay, and then maybe change the range a little bit also. And then let's do the kind of the same thing for the other side as well. Let's take it down this time, and then increase the tilt and increase or saturate the range a little bit. Okay, and now we can set both of these to multiply. And now it gives us the desired effect that these lines kind of fades away when they move towards the side of the tire. So as I said before, this mask panel here is where all the magic will happen, and it's really powerful. Although the tools are really simple and easy to use, but you can achieve a lot with this. So let's go back to the material view, select the material here, and disable the albedo, metalness and roughness as well. And then let's increase the bump. So I will then also again decrease the wrap to underline and decrease the threshold, and the details are now visible from the mask. So if you also have these lines visible, this is something weird that Mixer does sometimes with the masks. So what you can do is that just go to the where mask stack and then try to play with the scale of the projection and try to move it a little bit, and then it will go away. So I don't know the reason for it. It could be that the projection or the tiling of the mask is a bit wrong, or the algorithm needs to be adjusted, and this happens with adjusting the scale. So this looks good enough. Let's move on with the next layer. Now I want to add some damage to the edges here, and to do this I will first add a new layer and name it edge damage, and then disable the albedo, metalness and roughness, as I only want to affect the displacement or normals from this layer. And as before, add a mask stack, and this time add a noise called Burley 3, and just to view it, let's press 9 and then increase the seed, increase the amplitude so that we have a lot of variation in the mask, increase the frequency so that we can get some really contrasting noise here, so that this damage, I need it to look like some chunks have been taken out from the rubber on the edges, and then increase the octaves, the linearity a little bit, and maybe decrease the persistence. So this is just I get this by just by playing around with the noise and try to get to the effect that I think will work for me. So there is no perfect method to it. It's just a lot of trial and error with the noises, and uh, just eyeballing it basically, and to see if I get the result that I want. So now I want to use a curvature mask, and this is very interesting mask because it uses the curvature that we added earlier in the project in the base layer, and then it also adds to it the curvature from the layers that we have added later. So the curvature from the bumps you can see is also there, and this gives us really good results. And so make sure you're on this underlying mix, so then it will account for all the other layers as well. The base curvature map will only account for the curvature in the base layer, and then we can change to use the edges or the cavities or the edges and cavities, but here I want to use the curvature. And then I want to change the output a little bit to get to the part that I want, so maybe increase it. So I want it to affect these edges, and seems like I'm getting there, but I don't want it to affect these surfaces, planar surfaces on the tire, so maybe increase the tightness. Okay, let's multiply it and see the result, and it kind of looks okay. So we can see that the edges are now broken up a little bit. So let's go back to the material view and apply the damage and see how it looks. So let's decrease the wrap to underlying to about 0.1, and then decrease the threshold to about, and if we disable it, so you can see the edges are now kind of broken up. So now let's add a layer of mud to the tire, and from the structure it's kind of evident that the mud will be gathered inside these crevices here in the tire. So let's add a new solid layer and name it mud, and actually for this one we want the albedo, but we don't want the displacement or normals or occlusion. And roughness should also be there, and metalness it doesn't matter, so we will disable it as well. And let's add a mask stack and press 9, and let's get to work. So I will add a curvature and then use cavities only, and it's already looks quite good. I will just adjust it a little bit. Like so the cavities are really so we are really getting the cavities there. And then I will break it up by using a noise, so let's maybe use whirly 1. Increase the seeds, the frequency a little bit. Let's just increase the octaves, maybe just playing around till I get something that I like. So let's increase the linearity and the persistence a little bit, and now we can multiply it, and now we can see that it really breaks up the curvature map. Okay, so let's go back and go to the material view and now we can change the albedo to a more mud-like color. So let's change it a little bit, maybe a bit more towards the red side. No, okay, so this kind of looks okay. Okay, so I will go with this color here. So let's add another layer of mud. So add a solid layer, name it mud 2, and add a mask stack. Press 9 and get to work. To just be a little faster, I'll just use the mask from the lower layer and then adjust it. So let's delete the mask that I just added and then copy this mask stack and paste it, and then open the curvature, and what I want is to change the levels so that I get the edges instead of the cavities now, but just a hint of the edge. This looks kind of okay. Let's change the noise also. Decrease the seed, also decrease the frequency, maybe increase the octaves a little bit. I will take down the linearity. Okay, and then let's see, and again I will disable the displacement, normal, and occlusion so it does not have any effect. And this time I want a more dry kind of mud, so let's take it to a more yellowish tinge. Maybe this is too much, so maybe let's decrease the intensity. Okay, so I will go with this color. Okay, this looks okay, and maybe increase the roughness completely for both of the muds. And with this, the rubber material is complete. In the next video, I will go over the creation of a material for this metal part and the nuts. If you want, you can open the finished projects in Mixer. It should be included in the files that I have provided for download. You need to copy the path of the folder for projects for Mixer, which is this path. So you can open it by going to Edit and Preferences, just copy this path and then add it in an Explorer, and in this folder go to Projects and then extract the contents of the file Mixer Projects from the downloaded files here. And after this, when you restart Mixer, you will see that the project is available to be opened from the start screen. So that was it for this video. Hopefully I will see you again in the next one. Goodbye.